Call to order the Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 regular City Council meeting of the East Lansing City Council. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Altman.
Here.
Councilmember Meadows.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh.
Here.
Mayor Brookover.
Here. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
It's a tie in favor of Altman, and I assume that Mr. Meadows is seconding that motion. Is that correct? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, agenda passes unanimously. We have before us the minutes of the regular council meeting of 18 May 2025 and the City Council special discussion only meeting of April 2nd, 2025. Do we have a motion relative to those minutes?
Approval of both sets of minutes.
Moved by Altman, seconded by Mr. Meadows to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. We now come to that part of the agenda where we have communications. Item 2.1 is all written communications received by the council are posted on the online agenda packet. Item 2.2 is communications from the audience. I have several blue slips here. Ms. Ann Bean. Excuse me.
Hi, I'm Ann Bean, 1708, believe it or not, Ann Street. I live on my own street. So anyways, I am here. Both my husband and I went to East Lansing, and we went to school there. We came back. We raised our kids in East Lansing. We just love it, and I think we've contributed to the city quite a bit. But I'm just going to ask for some help with our neighborhood speeding issue. I live on the corner of Ann and Wayland, and that seems to be a racetrack going back and forth and back and forth. I try to provide a really nice place for people. I have a fairy garden. I have an herb garden that everybody can share. Half the time when I'm out on the right-of-way in the herb garden, I wear a safety vest because people are texting too. So I've almost hit several times. That is an issue I would love to get addressed or looked at. I love East Lansing, and I just want to feel safe. The other thing I want to talk about is the noisy cars. There's something they're putting on their cars, like an aftermarket thing that makes cars noisy. So I'm sitting on my back porch, nice evening, summer evening, just enjoying the night, and all I hear are these noisy cars. It is so anxiety-provoking. When my granddaughter comes to stay with me, she just has headphones she has to put on. It causes so much anxiety. So those are the things I really want to address, safety in our neighborhood. Also on Hagedorn, speeding going on constantly. Hagedorn all the time. I've been passed on Hagedorn. My husband's been passed on Wayland. So we'd really appreciate some attention, somebody looking at all this, especially the noisy cars and the speeding. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your input. Ms. Wargus.
Good evening. I'm the chairperson of the Arts Commission for East Lansing, and when I was here at the March 4th meeting, when we were asking that the city attorney would be asked to put an amendment to the 1339 ordinance. But at that time, I told you that we were working on a plan, finishing it up. We hope to have it before the council in July. And we spent a lot of time preparing the plan. We reviewed about 25 different plans we've seen from across the country, small communities, big cities, regions. We looked at all of it to see what was, different communities were doing. And we learned a lot from those plans. Types of art, how to engage the residents in the neighborhoods, and information from the Americans for the Arts, which is a national association that just has tons of information about public arts and what to do. And so we've really learned a lot, and I think we're going to have a really good plan as a result of that. But in the early stages of the preparing the plan, we did do a small survey to get feedback from the community. And what we learned is that there were a lot of comments about what the Arts Commission should be doing for the community, not just what we had been doing. Up to this point, we have done basically statues, paintings, and murals, and that's it. Part of that, when we looked at the ordinance to see what was holding us back from other things, we found some inconsistencies in the ordinance, and we had a conversation with the city attorney to talk about what we think we would like to do to open up and expand the options for the public and cultural arts in the community. Let's see, was there? So I think that what we want to have is a good plan that you will be able to look at things in a different way than we have in the past, and that we can put some, well, certainly get rid of the inconsistencies in the ordinance, but also look to what we can do to have much more variation, to engage our communities, our neighborhoods, our residents in participating in all of that, not just waiting for us to decide we'll get this artist to do this. We want to give them the opportunity to make decisions about what they'd like to see in their neighborhoods and not have everything just be downtown. So we're looking forward to any questions you might have about what we wanted to do with the ordinance, and Heather's here to talk about that during the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Chris Root?
Thanks. My name is Chris Root. I noticed that the agenda tonight has a closed session to look at a contract, and it says that it's possible there'll be a vote on it. I don't know what the contract is. I haven't asked anybody. Nobody's told me anything they're not supposed to tell me. I went back and looked. I'm guessing that there's a possibility that it is the contract with the non-supervisory police officers union. And I went back and looked at the agenda of the City Council for November 1, 2022, which was the last time the council voted on a contract with that union. And the agenda is attached to that agenda, the November 2022 agenda. And I recall that. It was attached on Friday, you know, at the same time as usual that attachments are placed on the agenda, so that people have an opportunity to read it and think about it and communicate with council members. And I remember that there was actually some very informative conversations that took place during those couple of days before the council meeting that have had an impact since then. You know, there were not changes to the language made, but it was extremely helpful to get an understanding of some of the language interpretation. It made a difference to have that opportunity to look at it. And so I am hoping that there would not be a vote tonight, that there would be a vote if you finish your discussion in closed session tonight. I would hope that what it is you are going to vote on would be attached to the next meeting, so that people in the community have a chance to look at it as well and comment if they wish to. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Michelle Shalakis? Michelle Shalaki, is that?
So I was looking to comment on the wetland regulation, which is later on the agenda. Do you want me to speak now or wait?
Sure,
for that time?
it's fine if you want to speak now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, okay. So I'm Michelle Shalakis, and I am the owner of 2447 East Lake Lansing Road, and I'm also the owner of Magic of Play Preschool, which is a nature preschool that we intend to build on that site. I've been working with Kebs Inc. for the project engineering and Wolgas Corporation for design and build. We've spent the last few months submitting and revising plans to make sure that we fully meet city, county, and state requirements. And right now, we are revising plans to meet the updated standards for the Ingham County Drain Commission. So as the owner of a future nature preschool on this site, it is in my best interest to maintain and preserve the wetlands on the property. Wetlands are wonderful habitats for children to explore and observe while they learn how to respect the environment and the plants and animals that live there. We've seen research show that positive childhood experiences in nature is what truly increases the likelihood of someone growing up to advocate for environmental sustainability. I want this preschool and the wetlands near it to last for years to come because I know the benefits of outdoor learning and green space will never go away. After reviewing our plans and their own research, Eagle has determined on March 21st that we do not need a permit from them to build the preschool. We had on-site wetland delineation and reports completed last summer by Marks Wetlands, and those findings were confirmed by the city wetland consultant in March. According to Eagle, the boundaries appear to be accurate, and they show no new or unpermitted wetland impacts from the detention basin or discharge. Eagle is not concerned about any damage to the wetlands from our project. ASTI also believes Wetland B should not be regulated because it doesn't fulfill any of the criteria to be considered essential. They noted its distance from an inland lake, pond, or stream, and the wetland's small size. Wetland B has seemed to not be regulated in the past when plans for the former Rite Aid at that corner were approved. And if the non-regulated status remains, we still do have protected wetlands at the site because the wetlands south of the property, Wetland A, are regulated by the city, and those wetlands are much larger in size. We have several families who have paid a deposit to be part of our preschool and more that are waiting to hear confirmation that we can start building. We know nature preschools are growing in popularity around the world, and East Lansing is no exception. I've lived in this community since 2008, and I love this area. I want what is best for the site and this community. So I'm hoping tonight you vote to make Wetland B not regulated because it doesn't fit the requirements for regulation. Any stormwater drain concerns are addressed by the stricter, newer requirements from the Drain Commission. And we, as a team, have shown that we're determined to adhere to any requests from the city. And by keeping the wetland non-regulated, it allows us to open up our school sooner, and we have a lot of families eagerly waiting for us to open. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize, we are having a public hearing on that. I just have my stuff out of
Okay.
order here, but we will assume your comments are directed in terms of that public hearing, and
That is
the
correct.
record will reflect that we will adopt your comments in that section of the meeting, nunc pro tunc, as if it happened during the public hearing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I thought Mr. Meadows would like me to pull that one out of the flags. Go ahead.
I was wondering if she wants to make additional comments during public hearing, is she able to come back up
Sure.
and do that? Okay.
Because I screwed up. Mr. Mesher, I think.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Gary Mesher. I live at 508 Wayland. I spoke to council briefly on March 18th at the last meeting regarding traffic enforcement and speeding in our city and also in our neighborhood, Southeast Marble neighborhood. I want to thank council members Watson and Altman for their supportive comments about this matter at that March 18th meeting. I look forward to hearing more from council in the future, in the near future, and the future as to what council response might be to this issue. Again, thank you.
Thank you for your input. Sandra Kushza. You're kidding. I got that one right?
Okay, my name is Sandra Kusha, and I live at 1707 Mount Vernon in Southeast Marble, and I'm also going to be talking about the problem with traffic. I'm going to take John R., which is the street parallel to Hagedorn. When Hagedorn was changed from a 4-lane to a 2-lane street, the rush hour traffic, in order to avoid going down Hagedorn, took a shortcut through John R. and use it as a speedway. Sometimes the cars are so backed up on Hagedorn, waiting to get through the traffic like during rush hour, that the people who live on the streets going into Hagedorn can't get out, and they have to find another method of getting around to get to work in the morning. Let me see. Let me go to the next page. Okie dokie, here we go. Children walk down Hagedorn to go to school sometimes. They're riding bikes, they're on skateboards. They're not going to be on the sidewalk. Also, you have other people walking on the street where the cars are speeding because the sidewalks aren't safe. They're cracked. They have problems with the shifting of the trees moving the sidewalk and everything. The sidewalks are also not cleaned when there's snow or ice covered, which makes it dangerous to walk on them, so people walk in the streets. And that's a problem for people in the streets when you have the speeding traffic going by. And I also wanted to give you some suggestions. A, you could change Hagedorn to 4 lanes. B, you could put up stop signs, yield signs, or speed signs on John R. You could also buy one of those wonderful little traffic monitors, you know, that take a picture of the speeding license plate and just send them a ticket. And you could also put in speed bumps. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this next one. Mary?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said I was a teacher and all my kids knew how to say it. Of course, I trained them.
Yeah, but you were giving them a grade. You just, you can give me a grade if you want to, or you can vote for me or not, but it's the way it works, okay?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Go
Anyway,
ahead.
I'm also from Southeast Marble, and I even walk dogs with my neighbors. Some streets do have sidewalks, as Sandra was saying, and some we have to walk in the street. But even though people supposedly are supposed to know that 25 miles an hour is a speed limit in a neighborhood, the students that come in and live in our neighborhood don't seem to know that. There's not one sign in the whole neighborhood, in the interior of the neighborhood, that says 25. I know you don't want to spend money on signs, but our corner, Bircham and Hagedorn, has 3 schools. The middle school, and the elementary, and then the other older one. But there's so many kids walking, like Sandra said, trying to cross the street, that it makes me nervous. People are zooming to work and not looking, and I'm surprised somebody hasn't been hit. There are a couple of bad actors we notice all the time that are going 45, 50. All the time, driving down Mount Vernon and other streets that don't have sidewalks on them. And there are children that have almost been hit, just like Ann said, her husband almost got hit. It's not known, this 25 mile an hour thing, and we've had more traffic since, as Sandra said, Hagedorn's got the bike lane, so there's less lanes for people to drive in Hagedorn. So I'm just really nervous. I'm hoping something doesn't happen. We have occasionally gotten an officer that will drive through the neighborhood to keep an eye on it, but they don't ever seem to be there when the speeders are there. You know, it just doesn't work out that way. Or they see the police car from a distance and they slow down. I mean, I just think at least around John R. and Bircham, there should be a speed limit sign or something. A speed bump, something to slow people down. And all these people park at the middle school to get their kids to the middle school, sit there, and I don't know, when I was a kid, I taught middle school, you had to go and stand in line. Might not be comfortable, but they let them stay in the cars, even though they're parking illegally and all backed up, till the door opens and they all get out. And it's just very difficult for the people that live in the neighborhood to get in and out of their driveways. So it is a constant problem. I'm just worried somebody's going to get hit. If we could, do we have to chip in together to buy a 25-mile-an-hour sign? Maybe a couple of them here and there in that part of the neighborhood. I don't know. So, and a lot of us are worried about it. We're just worried about the speed. The other thing is, as Ann was saying, we can hear those. I'm from the 50s, okay? All the guys I knew put those glass back mufflers on their cars on purpose to make noise. It was a thing. And then the law changed and you couldn't do it anymore. And that stopped. But in the past year, we hear those. It's like they got glass backs. I don't know what they are. You put them on your muffler and it sounds like it's got holes in it. I live all the way down on Mount Vernon and I can hear them up on Grand River. And then they speed up to about 50. And then, of course, when they get to the next intersection, they slow down. Nobody ever stops them either. So those are my two issues. Speeding in southeast Marble, 25 miles an hour, and those Hagedorn glassback mufflers, whatever they are. But we're mostly concerned about the people going 50 in our neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thanks for your input. Vanessa Trin.
Hi, everyone. My complaint, I also have the same issue that Sandra and Mary had just talked about. I want to add one more thing. There are people who would fly through the street and they don't yield. So if I'm coming through John R. and I bypass Snyder, Linden, sometimes I literally have to stop to make sure that there's no oncoming car fly by and they fail to yield. Yeah, it's not safe. Even we walk our dogs in the neighborhood, cars would fly by. Sometimes we would turn around and scream at the driver, "Slow down!" So we hope with these complaints or issue that we addressed tonight that we can get speed bumps or speed limit signs in our neighborhood, Southeast Marble neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody in line?
Yes, there are callers.
Okay.
Caller with the last number of 552 is allowed to talk. Please unmute.
Good evening. Kath Etzel, 1026 Daisy Lane. I am the Vice Chair of the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission. So I'm not speaking tonight at the behest of the Commission, but as an individual commissioner. I'm commenting tonight because it is possible, and I heard Chris earlier, we didn't plan that, that tonight's closed session involves the Uniformed Officers Union contract. This contract has been in negotiations for a long time, in large part because the union opposed the formation of an oversight commission even before we came into existence. The ability of the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission to provide oversight for the East Lansing Police Department must not be bargained away. We are at a critical time where it appears that a contract that has been negotiated behind closed doors may now be voted on by the council without notifying the public. Our hope is that the East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission retain its ability to investigate complaints, make recommendations about complaint outcomes, interview complainants, make policy recommendations, get body-worn camera footage, police reports, and other relevant information, file our own complaints, hire outside investigators, meet in public, discuss complaints in public, and all the other duties we are currently possessed. Anything less demonstrates to this community that holding our police department accountable is not a priority, and that events such as those that happened before the formation of the commission, such as incidents with Mr. Gastito, Mr. Nasir, Mr. Loggins, and since the commission's formation, where a black man was recently tased for not showing ID, where a 15-year-old black child was thrown to the ground for not providing ID, where a man with mental health issues was forcibly arrested after stating On several occasions, he wanted to be left alone on the property of the apartment complex where he lives, and where a black man was forcibly and illegally searched. I'm sorry, I just lost my place for a second. These are only a short list of incidents that occurred in the recent past. I find it doubtful that most people.
I think we lost your video or your
Commission.
audio. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. These are only a short list of incidents that have occurred in the recent past. I find it doubtful that most people in this community support these police actions, and thus, for any hope of change, the Commission must retain its ability to investigate, comment on, publish, and discuss in public these incidents as well as many others. If ELPD is doing nothing wrong, why can't the public know what they are doing? It is imperative that the decision by this council will not hinder the Commission from moving forward. The East Lansing City Council established the Independent Police Oversight Commission out of the belief and knowledge that the trust of the police department for members of this community had been broken. This commission's responsibility is first and foremost to the community, to ensure that the mission and purpose of the commission would be upheld. This mandate should not be at the forefront of the council's negotiation with the union. This mandate should be at the forefront of the council's negotiations with the union, and city ordinances and council's powers should not be subjugated by a bargaining attorney agreement, or should be vested solely in a labor attorney or other negotiating agents for the city. If this contract is being negotiated tonight, the vote must be delayed until the community and the commission are allowed to give input as unified officers serve this community and nothing less. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your input. You have somebody else in the queue?
We do. One moment. The gentleman with the last name Peters, you are welcome to address council. You are muted. We're going to pass.
Okay. Anybody else in the queue?
That message came back through to me to unmute, so it didn't go to whoever you intended it to. This is Kath again.
Thank you.
So sure.
Peters is still not unmuting.
Okay. You have anybody else in the queue?
No.
Okay. All right. We move on to item 2.3, communications from the mayor and council members. Let's start to the far left of me, Dr. Altman.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had a bunch of comments from the podium this meeting and the last about traffic enforcement issues in general and speeding in particular. And I want to say a little bit about my impressions of sort of why we are where we are with these sorts of issues. I have been making as much noise about this issue as anyone since I was elected in the fall of 2023. I've been trying to move this ball forward, but it feels a little bit like I'm trying to push a rock up a hill, frankly. We hear about this issue all the time. There's sort of a steady trickle of feedback from the community, not just from one neighborhood, but lots of different neighborhoods, lots of different people. My sense is I just don't know how much political will there really is to invest in a solution to this problem. It's more complicated than that, though. And I want to give you my impression of what the factors are that are standing in the way of a solution, and there's a number of them. My impression of the loud car issue is that this really became noticeable during the pandemic. I'm sorry. Right. Apparently I'm not making enough noise. It was during the pandemic that in our household, we noticed what sure seemed like drag racing. And we're not close to any main roads, but we still heard it. And we just sort of looked at each other wondering what is going on here. And it is anxiety provoking. It is absolutely anxiety provoking. It's really intrusive. And I kept wondering, why doesn't the council do something about it? It's so obvious and it's so bothersome. Why doesn't somebody do something about it? Not much happened. Since then, I've learned sort of more about what some of the constraints are. So state law is not our friend with this particular issue. State law, my understanding, makes it difficult for law enforcement to get measurements on moving vehicles. You have to have a stationary vehicle and you have to have a sound meter. And so that poses some challenges. Local law is not our friend either now anymore. We have a new ordinance on the books, Ordinance 1541, which we passed, which I'm just going to read the operative paragraph here because that's more accurate than trying to summarize it. It reads, except where an officer reasonably believes, based on articulable facts, that the violation is of a nature or magnitude that poses an immediate risk of harm to persons or property, a law enforcement officer employed by the City of East Lansing shall not stop or detain the operator or occupant of a motor vehicle based solely on one of the following offenses. And there's a list of offenses. And one of them is loud exhaust. Okay, so we have passed an ordinance basically saying that loud exhaust is okay. And I voted against that ordinance because I think it was wrong. And it's not just the enforcement, it's the signal that it sends. And I want to cite an analogy. What got me into politics 13 years ago was loud noise, it turns out. At that point, it was fireworks in the community. The state had just legalized civilian use of fireworks, and the Bailey neighborhood got really loud, okay, for a while. And so I learned that the city council could regulate fireworks within certain parameters. And so I showed up at the podium one night and I said, you guys should really regulate fireworks. And the city council said, yeah, we should. And a month later, we had an ordinance. I thought, okay, that's cool. And the noise got better, a whole lot better. And it wasn't just because the ordinance passed, it's because the ordinance sent a signal that the community was not going to tolerate this. Right? The ordinance said, this is not what we want. We don't want these loud noises. And we have an opportunity to do that with loud car exhaust as well, and we went the opposite direction. We said loud exhaust is okay. So that sends exactly the wrong signal. So the local law is also not our friend. There's other issues also. Police are understaffed. The road patrol is at three officers. It should be at 5. There was, I think, a view from the previous council that there was too much policing, and so policing was discouraged to some extent. I think that played a role. There may also be a lack of willingness to prosecute. So there's lots of different factors playing into this role, playing into where we are today. Certainly with loud exhaust, but more generally with traffic enforcement. Some of these things are going in the right direction. I hope, my understanding is that in the coming months we will be fully staffed in the police department. That will help once the road patrol is back up to 5. I encourage the community to keep talking about this because I'm tired of hearing myself talk about this. And if other people keep it on our radar, then that means it's not just me and it's not just any one person who sounds a little crazy because they talk about sitting in their living room hearing the drag racing 5 blocks away. You know, if a dozen people show up and say that, then it's not, you know, there's strength in numbers here. So what I would say to the community is keep the pressure on us, and that's all we can do, and with any luck, we'll be able to make some progress. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Meadows?
You know, I'm gonna ditto that a little bit. I heard from some people I haven't heard from in quite a while here at the microphone tonight, and it's great seeing you here. You know, I just want to talk a little bit about the neighborhoods for one thing. I think that in the past we've received reports about, you know, what's the right number of stop signs that you have in a community to make traffic move well. When I moved up here, I moved from Dearborn. I lived in Dearborn while I was going to law school. And there was a stop sign at every single corner. Apparently the former mayor there said if they want a stop sign, they're getting it. And frankly, that's been my rule ever since I got elected here. So if there is a throughway on John R. or on the other streets there, there is a process that we have to ask the Transportation Commission to recommend a traffic control order, and I would suggest that we get that process going. I don't know who's the liaison to transportation?
Me.
You? How about bringing that up with them? And I think that, if there is some diversion from the road diet that we did on Hagedorn, in some other areas, it's not as moving traffic into the neighborhood as it is in others, because it doesn't take long for people to learn that, you really don't, it takes longer to get there than just waiting in the queue and moving along. And in that case, because we've got virtually no stop signs on John R. or any of the east, north-south streets in that neighborhood, we need to take a look at it anyway. So on that one in particular, I want to say that I think we should get something going in that neighborhood. You also mentioned cameras, and we've had pushback in the past. The council has, back in the 90s in particular, when we talked about putting cameras on light poles and providing additional safety circumstances in the downtown and other areas of the city. I know they have these little speed signs that take a picture if you're exceeding the speed limit, and frankly, I think we all have a hard time keeping to 25 miles an hour, when that's the sign. I'm not so sure that the sign is more important that says 25 miles an hour than the stop signs, because even if somebody rolls through, they've had to slow down, and it also means if there's a lot of cars in there, everybody is trying to get through, but they learn very quickly it's a little bit faster to stick with the way that we've designed this. And then noisy cars. I was one of those who voted for the ordinance that has that language in it. I want to take a look at that language again. When you get kind of used to it sometimes. You don't in the middle of a neighborhood, I can tell you that. But when we moved up here, we lived about three doors off of off of Saginaw. And when we first moved in, we thought, are we ever going to be able to sleep? And you get used to it. But we have a different thing now. In those days, I'd hear about midnight, I'd hear the train whistle on campus. When they were crossing, I'd say, oh, it's midnight. Now I say, hey, it's 10:30, somebody just got off work, because I hear that same damn car go down Abbot every night at exactly the same time. So I'm also in favor of us taking a longer look at that again. So thank you all for coming and talking about this tonight, and I think if we can get the Transportation Commission up and listening to this issue, maybe we can get some recommendations with regard to it.
Councilmember Watson?
Councilmember Meadows, I checked out briefly, and you mentioned bringing something to the Transportation Commission. Was it the stop signs? Yes. Okay. The Transportation Commission reminds people that there's a process when you want stop signs put in, and so I can share that or make sure that gets back out. Sometimes people will make complaints to the Transportation Commission or maybe to City Council, and sometimes it's routed to the person that lets the community know where they need to put those complaints at, or concerns if they think a stop sign should be added. But I'm not in favor of adding stop signs. I was, as we were talking, and we're focusing on speeding and noise right now, it's interesting to put the pieces together and think it was former council that did something problematic for the community's peace. And the community's peace is reducing speed and also the noise. I'm not team penalize people necessarily, so I'm not saying, oh, the people should just get super ticketed, but if there's value in reducing speeds based on people being ticketed, then that should happen. And I'm also not in favor of cops always being involved in that. I grew up in Illinois, and now when I go back home, you blow a red light in certain spots or you're speeding, and they take the picture. I recently sent an email to our city manager about speeding and about a recent passage for automated ticketing. And that happened around the end of December. I'm surprised that our lobbyists didn't relay that information to us because it's something clearly that our community cares about. But someone had brought to my attention that, speaking of Dearborn has automated cameras. And so their system involves taking the picture and then getting it to a cop because there are issues with what the law states. But this recent passage also gives us an opportunity to ticket people who are speeding around school areas. And so it doesn't address everything because some of the speeding is happening at nighttime, but it addresses some of it. I was told that we were waiting on a full police force to be able to address the speeding. And just again, outside the box thinking and my interest in reducing the direct contact that the cops have with people, because it's led to some stats on disparities that exist in our community and are problematic. And so I've said this before, there was a long period of time that we had vacancies in public safety. So move the money and get speed bumps for folks if that's what they want. Put up the signs, the speed limit signs. Talk about this camera system so that we can get it slowed down. I've talked about where I live, and we have actual parties going on, and we have a noise ordinance. What we passed on council regarding pulling people over doesn't usurp what it means to have a rigged exhaust system. It was created for folks who just have a broken muffler and need to get it fixed and don't have the money right now. And so I think we need to be careful on who we're trying to come for and who not as we're trying to address the speed and also the noise in the community. And the other thing for me is we've got the speeding car, that we've got the loud cars, and everyone talks about that, but we also have loud parties, and those are standing parties. You can find them. If you call in and the police show up, they can ticket those folks. And it's interesting for me to hear the focus just be on the noise of vehicles when I've talked about the partying, and I've also talked about the loud leaf blowers or whatever else, gas-powered leaf blowers, or whatever else goes on in the early morning when other people are trying to have peace in their home. I wanted to think about what our LEPOT commissioners said, and I reflected on that there have been times that council has come out of closed session and voted in favor or not, well, most time in favor of collective bargaining agreements. But taking into consideration the sensitivity and what it is that they're saying, I will definitely think about that as we consider the times that we do come out of closed session and just vote in favor of a collective bargaining agreement without our community or the public being able to see it or ask questions before that. I think that's I think that was all my points that I wanted to make. I appreciate everyone that comes forward and makes remarks and emails us and communicates with us. And I am interested in a community where, we can walk and bike ride and feel safe, and also a community where we can be at peace with the noise. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure.
a couple of things this evening, just to put a highlight on some of the prior comments, that it would be my hope that the city manager would work with our interim chief as staffing ratios can help support the neighborhood, especially with those speeding cars. Second, I just want to remind everyone that the East Lansing Public Library has their bids, bites, and books. Or is it books, bids, and bites? I don't know. Wickety, wickety, wickety whack. But it's one of the community's best events, so hopefully folks can come out and attend. Individual tickets are $35, and family tickets are $70. Also want to mention that the University Student Commission met this evening, and I know I'm the liaison to that commission. Just want to reference a couple of topics that was on their agenda this evening, one of which is rental costs within the community, as well as application fees. I know the city of Ann Arbor has recently passed an ordinance earlier this year that caps rental application fees at $50. And I think that's something, I know I've had some individual conversations with colleagues up here, that it may be something of interest that we may want to take a look at here within the city of East Lansing. So just wanted to flag that issue, as well as they are al fresco fans. And they look forward to, I know, future planning that will take part in terms of looking at that footprint and calendar for that future report. And then I just want to thank again, I know some of our arts commissioners are here, our president, as well as our vice president of that commission, and all the work that they've put behind that ordinance recommendations and changes to that. So being on these commissions is so critical to our community, and I know it takes time and attention, and it really brings everything we want forward for the council to review and hopefully in our future accept those changes to support our community. So with that, I kick it over to you, Mayor.
The rest of the council, having seemingly covered the entire waterfront that I would be commenting on, other than perhaps tariffs, which I can't, in the scope of my imagination and education, have any idea what's going on or going to go on with the tariffs. So I have no further comment for tonight. Mr. City Manager.
Oh, sorry.
This evening, council received the fiscal year 2026 budget program of services. That review commences next Tuesday at 7 p.m. here at Hannah Community Center. And in doing so, I wanted to especially thank Audrey Kincaid, Justin Geiger, Matt Torek, Oren Valley, Andrea Smith for all the hard work and discussion, and all of the department heads that worked long hours to put this document together and are excited about presenting it to you on the 15th and the 29th. So thank you very much to staff, and look forward to the discussion with the City Council.
City Attorney report.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Mr. City Manager, please.
3.1 is approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. A is appoint Benjamin Lowen to the Housing Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2026. B is appoint Maria Pre to the Downtown Management Board for a full term ending December 31st, 2028. C is appoint Jill Rohde to the Local Development Finance Authority for a full term ending June 30th, 2028. 3.2 is approve creation of a new Payroll and Benefits Coordinator position within the Finance Department. 3.3 is approve street closures for eastbound and westbound lanes on Albert Avenue between Abbot Road and MAC Avenue for the Greater Lansing Area Moms GLAM Jam Summer Kickoff scheduled for June 8th, 2025. Also for the East Lansing Pride scheduled for June 14th, 2025. And the Summer Solstice Jazz Festival is scheduled for June 20th through the 21st, 2025. 3.4 is approve a traffic control order 495 to restrict parking along Camelot Drive and Dunbar Court to 1 hour parking during school hours. 3.5 is approve and authorize city manager to sign the operating agreement between the City of East Lansing and the Board of Trustees of Michigan State University for Scene Metro Space located at 110 Charles Street. 3.6 is approve a one-year contract extension with G Farms Nursery and Greenhouse LLC for the annual street tree planting contract in an amount not to exceed $97,810 and authorize the city manager to sign. 3.7 is adopt a resolution to provide required notice to Easterly Law, PLLC, pursuant to contract for legal services. 3.8 is approve the annual pollinator-friendly community resolution. 3.9 is approve a resolution to support a No Mow May initiative in the city of East Lansing. 3.10 is approve a resolution proclaiming April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the city of East Lansing. 3.11 is approve and authorize city manager to sign the related MERS service credit application for Andrew Stevenson to purchase 3 years of service credit from the Municipal Employees Retirement System, MERS. 3.12 is set a public hearing for April 22nd, 2025, in accordance with ordinance number 1206 for property owners in the fiscal year 2025 hazardous sidewalk project area to contest the need for sidewalk repairs. 3.13 is set a public hearing for May 13th, 2025 for a request from Hassan Beydan of Decora, Inc. On behalf of Pizza Walla for approval of a special use permit located at 523 East Grand River Avenue. The applicant's request is to allow for alcohol service. Property is zoned B3 Central City Center Commercial. 3.14, set a public hearing for May 13, 2025 to receive comments on ordinance 1543 amendments intended to be corrections and clarifications to Chapter 50 zoning and Chapter 32 signs of the City of East Lansing Code of Ordinance. And that completes your consent agenda.
Do we have a motion relative to the consent agenda?
Move approval.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you, did it?
Move approval.
Dr. Allman moves approval. Do we have a second?
I have a second with a change.
Wow.
I'd like to move item 3.7 down to the business agenda. Yep,
I'll
support that.
thank you.
Okay, I don't recall exactly how this works. I think any single member can ask that something be moved off the consent agenda, so that will be done.
Okay.
So I assume the second is a conditional second, conditionally moving the one item down to, it will now be item 5.10 of the business agenda. So the motion having been made and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Item 4.1 is a public hearing to consider the regulatory status of a sub 2-acre wetland located at 2447 Lake Lansing Road. Sir.
Good evening, Cliff Walls, DPW. As you mentioned, public hearing. This is kind of an interesting one. This is a process that exists in our ordinance for wetlands that are below 2 acres. The reason behind this, the existence of this part of our ordinance is because under the state wetland law, in order for a local government to be authorized to regulate wetlands, they have to have certain ordinance criteria. If they want to regulate wetlands below 2 acres, there's specific criteria that need to be in the ordinance, which is the 10 criteria on your, I think, third page here. There's a lot of information that you've gotten in the previous, like the setting of the public hearing. There's a lot of information in this one and in the business item. This opportunity right now, though, is to allow the public an opportunity to express their feelings regarding this determination on if the wetland at 2447 East Lake Lansing Road is essential to the preservation of the natural resources of the city or not. If it is deemed essential, it is therefore regulated by the local government, us. And if not, it is subject to all other applicable laws, but not our wetlands permitting. So I guess if you'd like to steer me on how you want to approach questions before the public hearing, I'm happy to take any. I don't want to overload information twice, but I'm happy to.
Do you have any questions, anybody?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you've heard the earlier testimony with regard to this, and I would like you to comment on that, and if you agree that the construction that's proposed here will not significantly impact this small wetland.
Yes, as proposed, this particular ordinance process is meant to be somewhat project agnostic. Like even if there was not a project plan in place yet, you would initiate this process to determine and to inform the site development planning process. But as proposed, the impact there would be a wetland impact, but it would be relative to the increased drainage to wetland B, not in the traditional sense when people think of wetland impact of filling it with dirt, occupying it. As defined in our ordinance, a wetland additional drainage to or from is considered an impact, but it's not in the way that you would intuitively consider wetland impact, if that makes sense. But yes, I agree that as presented, it's unlikely to be detrimental to the wetland. And yeah, I mean I think that's my answer on that.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When Michelle commented about the change that the Ingham County Drain Commissioner made, is that in our packet, or can you speak to that?
The change of
That there were rule changes that the Drain Commissioner had made that seemed to, I don't know, support. I don't even remember what she said. I don't know if you were listening. But.
I'm not sure I'm clear on exactly that, but I will say, as she referenced, there's a pre-application meeting and communication with Eagle just to confirm the jurisdictional determination. That's a fancy way of saying whose ball is this, or whose court is this ball in. They said that it's not, under their regulatory oversight. Typically, Eagle regulates wetlands 5 acres and above, or if it's next to, a river, lake, or stream. There's some other, environmental factors that would factor in there. They would have to work with Ingham County Drain Commissioner, and I understand that they have been, just determining that the development would get its stormwater permits. So because the discharge in this area is to the Raby Drain instead of infrastructure owned and operated by the city, that drainage, stormwater, that whole regulatory framework falls under the jurisdiction of the drain office rather than DPW, the city. I don't know if either of those was specifically what you're.
No, but just Michelle, if there's anything you want to add or help me along again, because I thought I heard you make comments about the Ingham County Drain Commissioner making some recent changes.
Well,
So, yeah.
why don't we wait until we open
Yeah,
the public hearing and then she can comment further. So any other questions from council?
I do want to clarify one thing, is when I said that it's unlikely to impact the wetland, like that is a step. If it, is regulated, there would be guidance from our wetland consultant to make a more formal determination. But what I was saying there is, the impact that we and the consultant anticipate would be relative to the drainage, which half of the wetland is a drainage basin, so that makes sense.
I have a question, Mayor.
Sir.
So I don't understand our environmental consultants. Well, two questions. The first is, if our ordinance really is project agnostic, right, then we shouldn't be thinking about the current project. We should be thinking in terms of a general project. Just like when we make zoning decisions, we make them based on not a specific project unless it's conditional zoning. We make it based on the intensity of use allowed by the zone. If we don't regulate this, and somebody wants to go in there and fill in wetland B, which is the one we're making a decision on, and it's not, and we decide it's not a regulated wetland, then they can just fill it in, right? They don't need any permit. They don't need to do anything under our wetland ordinance.
Relative to the wetland protection ordinance, correct?
Right.
There are other areas of, other permits that they would have to apply for in order to be able to expand a parking lot and stuff like that. But correct. They would be exempt, or not exempt, it just would be ruled as wetland that would not be regulated moving forward.
So then it's not a wetland. They can do whatever, they can take that retention basin and fill it in.
Definitely not the retention basin, because that would be, this is an assumption, but it's a pretty fair one to say that that is servicing as there and the former Rite Aid's stormwater detention basin, which that is regulated under the county drain office, and they would have maintenance agreements likely with that, entity. But in terms of, the setback requirements and some of those things, like we have a 15-foot wetland setback, you wouldn't be able to necessarily regulate this on the wetland setback, but we also have natural features setbacks. So there's other levers, but in terms of its wetland protection, or its applicability under the wetland protection ordinance, yeah, that would change. But in terms of the actual stormwater detention pond, no. That would be regulated under their phase 2 obligations under the drain office.
Okay. I think that answers my question. I was under the impression that they could that some random developer who wanted to just fill that in could fill it in, but.
Maybe the portion to the, again, subject to other permitting, but the half that's kind of to the north, that's not part of the detention basin, theoretically, yes. But the part that is being used and was built as detention would have to remain such. That's how I would imagine that this would go if it was regulated, is they would have to go through a permit review, under our wetland consultant. And I imagine that the condition of the permit would be produce copies of your approvals through the drain office. Yeah, that would be like how I would anticipate it going. But yeah, that's just it's a different jurisdiction and a different method or regulatory framework that protects that component of this parcel. And also it would be in, anyone's interest to maintain their stormwater infrastructure as well. But
All right, thank you.
I have another question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Meadows.
Just a brief one, but this project comes within the ambit of the Planning Commission to approve the project?
so my understanding is no, because this was part of a 3-parcel proposal 20, 25 years ago. And there was originally land use approvals that were granted during the proposed development of the Rite Aid on that corner. But that original development also included the remaining parcels kind of between there and the Costco. And so it's my understanding that because it's not subject to additional review for land use approval, doesn't have to go to Planning Commission or Council, the permitting decision, if it was regulated, would be that of the city engineer or their designee, which is a separate process under our wetland protection ordinance.
And does the city engineer under our ordinance have the authority to place conditions on an approval?
Yes, yeah, so it's either approve with conditions, or deny. And then there's an appeal process.
And the city engineer could say, conditioned upon no filling of the wetland. Is that right?
I don't believe so.
All right. I think we need a little more information on that, but I would like to know the answer to that question.
Sure.
And I believe that we did approve essentially the creation of lots with the Rite Aid approval, but I don't remember us exempting it from any kind of review process. So if somebody can check on that, I'd like to know that.
Well, let me ask the council this, within the confines of what's required. It occurs to me that we really don't have sufficient information, especially given the council or the Commission on the Environment's recommendation that we do designate this as a protected wetland. And the applicant has indicated some things that have happened within, I guess, the last week or 10 days or 2 weeks that we don't have documentary evidence of at this point that I understand.
In terms of?
She was mentioning approvals by this, that, and the other person.
Oh, that was Eagle just reaching out and saying, yeah, this is not, we don't not regulate this.
Okay, but is that in writing someplace?
Yes.
Okay, and do we have that?
We do, but it's, per our ordinance, is typically past practice, and this has been a question when I took this program over, is what obligation does the city have to ensure that the applicant is fulfilling their responsibilities through other entities, like typically a state wetland permit?
Let me interrupt you. That's not my question. My question is, do we have the document, and was the document provided to us in tonight's record?
We have an email from the staff person, and no, it was came after the publishing of this.
Okay, and then there was dialogue about the interaction with the drain commissioner, and you gave us an explanation of how you thought or intuited that that would work, but we really don't have that specific documentation in the record tonight either, correct?
I don't believe those approvals are, I mean, they would be able to speak to that, but I'm not, it's separate from the wetland component, so it wouldn't come to me normally anyways, and it wouldn't come to the city. It would be like the engineering department would say, and the planning department say, just show us that you have all your permits.
Yeah, and I understand that, but you gave us, so here's my question for the council. Should we defer the public hearing to another date, or should we go ahead with the public hearing and then subject to the or at the conclusion of the public hearing, ask staff to provide us with any additional documentation we need?
I would say that we continue with this public hearing. We would not make a decision tonight anyway, although we have this item 5.4, I think that should be deferred.
Okay.
But we finished the public hearing, and that way, if we defer it to a date certain, then if we decide we are going to move forward, we'd be able to move forward that night.
Okay.
And that, I think, timing was one of the issues that was brought up by the proponent here, so that, I think, helps on that a little bit.
Okay, so I therefore declare a public hearing to consider the regulatory status of a sub-2-acre wetland located at 2447 Lake Lansing Road open. And ma'am, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce it. Shalakis? Shalakas. Close, I'm getting there. Do you want to come up and, you gave a very nice presentation initially, but it seems like there's some other questions that maybe you can clarify for us if you can, and add anything else you want, obviously.
Sure. Well, one thing I can address is the approval of the project. That came from Landon Bartley, who I think I saw here maybe at one point.
Yeah, he's right behind you.
Oh, hi, yes. They, and I hope I get this wording right, he can correct me if it's wrong, but they had determined that the use that we were pursuing, which is a childcare, a preschool, fits in with the zoning that would be for that area. So that's why we didn't need to go through approval to the Planning Commission and City Council. And then,
excuse me, let me interrupt you. So I think Ms. Watson had a question or inquiry for you.
yes, so you were asking about the updated Drain Commission requirements that we need to follow. I would say that our project engineer, Greg, is going to be the best person to answer that because he understands that far better than I do. So I'm happy to answer any other questions, but for that specific question, I would love for Greg to answer that.
Sir.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Greg Petrie with Kebs Incorporated. So we had a meeting just recently with the drain office, and we will have to get our approvals and permits from the drain office. I'm working on a few minor changes that we're going to have to do for them to meet their standards. And then I'd like to also just do a quick summary of the project. Originally, when Rite Aid was designed, the two other parcels were a part of that. And the detention basin was designed to take on all three parcels as they were developed. So that detention pond, was essentially constructed, and it created the majority of that wetland, in order to service the Rite Aid in those parcels. So that's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of how the wetland was created when we had to put in the stormwater detention. And then the last thing, from the detention basin, we had to get an Eagle regulated discharge back in the day. So there is a permit out there to discharge the stormwater.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else want to speak during the public hearing? I therefore declare the public hearing to consider the regulatory status of a sub-2 acre wetland located at 2447 Lake Lansing Road closed. Any questions for staff at this point, at this juncture? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the business agenda. Item 5.1, thank you, appreciate it.
Hello. Thanks for having us back. I'm here to remind you of the changes that we asked for in Ordinance 1339. So the changes are to make the ordinance consistent, both with itself and with the zoning ordinance, to update the definition of art and allowable expenses from the Public Art Fund, and to make art more accessible. We have also confirmed with the City Attorney, Tony Chubb, that these changes do not weaken or change the requirement for the developers.
Okay, this is just a first reading, correct?
Yes.
Okay, are there any questions for staff or anything? Okay. Mr. City Attorney, I assume we can then move this on to a subsequent agenda?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.2, consideration of a contract with Moore Trosper Construction Company for $98,086 to replace the basketball court and construct new walkways in Tamarisk Park with a project contingency of $9,800, and authorize the city manager to sign. Sir.
Good evening, Council. Justin Drinky, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation, and Arts. Happy to present to you a contract to renovate the basketball court and install some new accessible walkways in Tamarisk Park. We did have a bid opening for this project, and the lowest qualified bidder is Moore Trosper Construction Company. There are several additional details in the packet for you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. City Manager, do you recommend that we pass this?
I do.
Are there any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
You consulted with the neighborhood association, I think, extensively
Yes.
in this issue. So we're quite sure that they want the basketball park
Yes.
in there? Okay, because
Yes.
sometimes those can be a little noisy and people don't necessarily want to live next to them, but it sounds like there's consensus in the neighborhood that they want this.
Yes, based on the conversations that we had with the Tamarisk Neighborhood Association, it is a popular basketball court. It's loved by the neighborhood.
Great. May we have a motion?
Mayor, I have a motion to approve and authorize the city manager to sign a contract with Moore Trosper Construction Company for $98,086 to replace the basketball court and construct new walkways in Tamarisk Park, and approve a project contingency of $9,800.
I'm going to call the tie in favor of the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Singh. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We then move on to item 5.3, consideration of a contract with Anderson, Fisher and Associates, Inc. for $112,440 to complete Phase 3 renovations in Emerson Park with a project contingency of $11,200 and authorize the city manager to sign. Sir.
Okay. We also have a project to complete renovations in Emerson Park. This is part 3 of the 3 phases of the master plan that was developed in partnership with the neighborhood. And this will complete that project by taking the walkway through the north part of the park, installing a merry-go-round, and doing some pollinator-friendly landscaping. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Mr. City Manager, do you recommend we pass this?
I do.
Do we have a motion? I move that we authorize the city manager to approve a contract with Anderson, Fisher and Associates, Inc. for $112,440 to complete Phase 3 renovations in Emerson Park with a project contingency of $11,200 and authorize the city manager to sign same contract. Second by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. We therefore move to item 5.4, consideration of the regulatory status of a sub-2-acre wetland located at 2447 Lake Lansing Road. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to defer this matter until the, the 15th. Would that be the 22nd? Is that our next business meeting?
April 22nd?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Watson. Any discussion?
I have just a question. And in the meantime, because, it looks to me like Section 5036 of our ordinance, it does in Section K allow for administrative approval, which I think happened here, but I don't think it defers the ability in Section D to provide conditions of approval. So under those circumstances, I'd like some kind of advice as to whether we could sort of restrict a little bit so take care of the concerns that Councilmember Altman brought up.
And go ahead.
You referenced Chapter 50.
Yes.
So there's also under the Chapter 49 for the city engineer has the conditions relative to this particular instance as well.
I have a question also.
Go ahead, Dr. Altman.
I would appreciate some clarification concerning the environmental consultant's conclusion that this wetland fails to meet all the 10 criteria in our wetland ordinance. And I'm specifically wondering about criteria E and F. E is the site provides flood and storm control by the hydrologic absorption and storage capacity of the wetland. I don't understand how they can say that it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And F, the site provides wildlife habitat by providing breeding, nesting, or feeding grounds or cover for forms of wildlife. Did they do a site visit and determine that there's no wildlife? Did they determine that there's no wildlife living there?
No. So I asked this question as well because this has come up in these instances, which I've only been a part of 2 of them, but they do similar things for other communities. And I was asking them, like, how do you make that determination? Because I had the same thought. Like, that's pretty subjective. Somebody could make an argument, either way on most of these. How it was explained to me, which they recognize as their professional opinion and is, it's not necessarily a recommendation. It's more just their it is a recommendation, but it's explained to me as how do I say it? The history behind this particular 2 acres and below criteria was meant to be a tool for local communities to use to protect small but very high quality wetland habitats and environments. Thinking like a vernal pool, which is often never going to be large enough to I'm not saying there's none, but it's those are typically kind of pocket and small, but they have outweighed or outsized impact for their size. And so that's typically their mentality going into these. Is this something that is exceptional and essential to the community and to the local environment? Recognizing that, there's, depending on any one person's opinion, you can make, either one of those kind of fit, whatever your gut's telling you. But that was more of the history, to my understanding, behind this was protecting these very small vernal pools and similar high quality, exceptional resources. I could be wrong, but that's how they've explained it to me, and that's what they're typically looking for, is something that you're not going to find this elsewhere nearby.
So,
in that regard.
So my concern about that is that nothing that you just said is in this ordinance.
Yeah.
And so I think our environmental consultants should be reading our ordinance and giving us opinions based on our ordinance, not on what they think the ordinance is supposed to mean. Right? Because that's creating some confusion here.
That's a good point. I will say that if for a local government to be able to have this authority, they all have to have those same 10 criteria. So what they were expressing to me was more how it's been applied over history or in their professional careers. Not necessarily the intent, but just if everyone who's doing something similar as the city in this instance is under the same criteria because it's prescribed under Part 303 of the state's interior wetlands protection ordinance, then that's been their experience, their professional experience with the interpretation of that. Recognizing, as I've said multiple times, that it's very subjective and it could go either way.
So I'm fine with it being subjective and going either way, but I'm not fine with them interpreting our ordinance to mean something that it doesn't. And that suggests to me that we have a problem with our environmental consultant. I don't know what you can do about this, but I'm just saying my position on this is, does it meet the ordinance? And what I'm getting from the letter from the environmental consultant is they're interpreting some other ordinance that apparently exists in their minds.
Okay, what do you want? I understand what you're saying. Is there something you want staff to do?
I don't think there's anything that staff can do.
I think you already said what you wanted staff to do, which was to take a look at the analysis that the consultant performed, correct? Okay. And then the other thing I'd like to add to this in terms of staff report to us is I admit that I'm entirely confused by the process in terms of the Drain Commission permits. And since the Drain Commissioner has a great amount of power under the state statute, and because part of this property apparently is part of a drain system that's ill-defined in terms of my word usage, but I would like staff to then give us a precise step-by-step analysis of all the permits, powers to be that affect this particular piece of land before we make a decision. So you may have already told me that, and you may have already put it in your report, and you may have already said it in 3 different ways, but I guess what I'm telling you is I need it in a different way that goes bang, 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 bang through everything that can affect this site. Okay. Do we have a motion? We already made the motion. And we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Why don't we take a 10-minute break here, please? Call the council back into session after a brief break, and we're at item 5.5, consideration of a request by the Commission of the Environment to allow proposed changes to section 6-172.302.4 to be drafted by the city attorney. I move that we authorize the city attorney to draft proposed changes as suggested by the Commission on the Environment within the context of whether those changes are consistent with existing statutory language, with the understanding that once they're drafted, they're just proposed changes and they come back to us in the usual manner for ordinance changes, which would make it a 2-meeting process before adoption. So that's my motion. Is there a second? Second from Meadows. I'm sorry, guys. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Item 5.6, consideration of a request by the Commission on the Environment to allow proposed changes to Chapter 49 wetland protection be drafted by the city attorney. I move that we entertain the request of the Commission on the Environment and authorize the city attorney to draft such proposed changes, again, with the understanding that those changes will be submitted in the usual ordinance process for the deliberation of the council. Second from Meadows. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Cliff.
Nice work.
Item 5.7, consideration of a resolution authorizing notice of intent to issue revenue bonds to finance capital improvements at the Water Resource Recovery Facility, WRRF, and improvements to the sewer collection system in an amount not to exceed $6 million. Sir.
Good evening, Council. Ron Lacoste, Director of Public Works, and with me is Roger Sweats from Dickinson Wright, who serves as the city's bond counsel. Before you, and I'll point out one correction, where you see revenue bonds, it should say municipal securities, and the resolution is correct, but the AIR was not. So before you is consideration of a resolution authorizing notice of intent to issue municipal securities to finance the capital improvements at the Water Resource Recovery Facility and improvements to the sewer collection system in an amount not to exceed $6 million. This item is kind of the second part of an item that was brought before council on March 4th, where you approved a resolution of intent to sell bonds not to exceed $51 million, which will be paid through a CWSRF loan. This portion of it is for the ineligible part that is not approved to be paid for by the CWSRF loan. Which is what the $6 million is to pay for the ineligible part that can't go through that loan process. Again, these are improvements to the city sewer system in the Cedar Village area. A large sewer separation project also goes up Gunson and Milford up into the Bailey neighborhood. So improvements there, and then some continued improvements at the Water Resource Recovery Facility, the admin building. There's a reason we waited for the admin building, is all of the upgrades that happened at the plant. A lot of equipment that's in the admin building was still needed while the plant was upgraded. Now that all that stuff has been upgraded, all the obsolete equipment can be removed from the administration building. New lab facilities, upgraded ADA improvements, equitable facilities for female employees, utilizing the combined heat and power unit to provide heat to some of the galleries, things like that. Any of the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant are paid by contract, 40%, I'll try to get this right this time, 40% Michigan State University, 33.33% Meridian Township, and 26.67% East Lansing. And then for the sewer separation portion in the Cedar Village and Gunson Milford area, they're laid out some costs there of ineligible portions of the project, and primarily that's due to what they consider eligible under CWSRF is what's required for the sewer portion of the project. So some of the water mains included, road improvements are included when it's related to the sewer improvements. And these are improvements that are necessary, that make sense to do with the project, but that are not necessarily required because of the sewer work we're doing. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
So for the benefit of the public, will you tell us the location of the administration building?
It's at the Water Resource Recovery Facility, just off Trowbridge Road Extended. If you follow Trowbridge Road West Extended, it's kind of on the off-ramp there from 496 eastbound to Trowbridge. It's right there off the off-ramp. You can see it from the highway.
Okay, thank you. Questions for staff? Anything? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve a resolution to purchase, acquire, and construct capital improvements and to publish notice of intent to issue municipal securities to finance improvements at the water resource facility and improvements to the sewer collection system in an amount not to exceed $6 million. Does that do it?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Watson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 5.8, consideration of a request to extend the approval of a site plan by Timber Sauna Company, Daniel Downs, to install a seasonal sauna park in the vacant lot at 270 West Grand River Avenue for 1 year to expire May 2nd, 2026. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Landon Bartley, Principal Planner. As you stated, this is an extension request for Timber Sauna at 270 West Grand River. This is the northeast corner of the intersection of Grand River Avenue and Delta Street on the west end of downtown. In December of last year, the council approved the applicant's request to construct a sauna park with a condition of approval setting a time limit for that approval to expire on May 1st of this year. The applicant, in the meantime, ran into some unexpected issues that have delayed their progress and is now requesting an extension of approval for 1 year to May of 2026. Project was originally approved for, or recommended for approval by both the Planning Commission and the Downtown Development Authority in October and November of 2024. And then both the Planning Commission and DDA have again recommended approval of this extension at their meetings on March 26th and March 27th, respectively. With the packet in your, or the item in your packet, we've included an updated site plan, updated plan set, but no material changes are to the site or the operation are proposed. That's just a more detailed plan set for your benefit. The applicant is simply requesting the extension until May 2 of 2026. Can I answer any questions?
Where's the handicapper bathroom?
I'll have to defer that to the applicant, who's here tonight.
Good evening, Council. Dan Downs here with Timber Fire and Ice. I can be available for any questions.
Where's the handicapper bathroom?
The handicap bathroom, being this is a temporary site as proposed, is a ADA bathroom on a trailer, so it's dropped to grade. It also comes with a ramp that goes up to the door for the ADA bathroom. So it is a trailered bathroom, mobile bathroom.
Okay, and that's a change from your last plans?
The last plans should have included the ADA bathroom.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The plan still includes fire pits and a wood-fired unit?
The fire, working with the code and the regulation for offsets to buildings, it may have to be taken out of the plan, being that there's a certain amount of feet you have to be away from structures with fire. So if the current site plan, we do not have a fire pit that is going to be on there, no.
So I have a process question, don't go away. So question for our principal planner. At this stage, can we add a condition of approval?
Yeah, yes, you could. The request for the extension is essentially a request to modify the existing conditions, so you could create another condition.
Would you be amenable to adding a condition of approval that states that no wood shall be burned on site?
Is that a question for me?
That is a question for you.
Can I ask the reasoning for the proposal?
I think it makes no sense to burn wood in a dense downtown, a dense urban area. Wood smoke is a pollutant, it's an irritant. You don't want to stand downwind of somebody smoking a cigarette. City Hall and various other buildings have signs that say no smoking within 50 feet of the entrance. It does not make sense to burn wood in that area.
Understood. A little bit of context for sauna, I guess, just hopefully this helps. You have traditional sauna, which is wood-fired, and a lot of folks that do enjoy sauna that have come to adopt sauna as a lifestyle and would partake in the sauna village. The fire offers kind of a unique experience. So as a kind of a first principle, and also looking at other sites, including Boston and the Greenway, where we built saunas and helped a company get going over there. There were 2 wood-fired saunas in the Greenway there in downtown Boston. So from that perspective, we would still like to keep it in the proposal. But I understand where you're coming from with the smoke pollution. Probably from a health perspective you're coming from, or maybe even the smell you don't like, or
Public health, even people with respiratory issues are going to be most affected, but even people not with respiratory issues are not going to want to be downwind of that. There are apartments right across the street that are several stories up, and if they can't open their windows because of the fire pits, that's not fair to them.
I'd be open to nixing any fire pits, open fire pits, which are inherently inefficient in their ability to have secondary burn, which secondary burn within wood-fired heaters, stoves, etc., is a feature where it reburns the smoke. So for the wood-fired sauna that we have in the proposal, the stove is highly efficient and has a secondary burn. So for the first 10 minutes, there's a lot of smoke. Once the fire gets hot, the stove gets hot, there's the secondary burn that starts up in that. And you really don't see the smoke. You can smell it a little bit, but the efficiency of modern stoves, which this manufacturer that we use has a highly efficient stove.
So I understand that saunas are a particular type of experience, but not every type of experience belongs in every type of context, right? If you want to go have a sauna in the woods, that's great, but that's the place to have it, in my view.
Understood. And are there similar city, maybe bans or ordinances against wood fire that are not grandfathered in type situations?
Yeah. Nobody can build a fire in the city of East Lansing.
Gotcha.
Well, what do you mean by that?
You have to have a permit to build a fire
Okay.
in the city of East Lansing.
All right. I kind of was going to ask, and I kind of was thinking you were asking, doesn't someone vet this process so that if it were to be problematic, it's in a policy or a procedure that they wouldn't be able to go forward?
Yes.
Okay.
The fire marshal is responsible for the fire safety here.
And I'm sorry it didn't make it to you, the concerns about the wood burning fire when you were coming back in front of us.
No, that's no problem.
If I could, Mayor.
Sure.
I raised these very issues at the last approval meeting we held about this. So, in fact, they were on the table. And the fire marshal is not going to disallow a fireplace because people downwind can smell smoke. They're going to disallow a fireplace because of safety issues. So that does not address my issues.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I have a motion, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move to add a 9th condition to the approval, which is no wood shall be burned on site.
Is there a second?
Is that a friendly amendment or is that an addition?
It's a motion.
Okay, I'm not going to vote in favor of it, so.
Okay, so the motion is to add a condition to the current proposal that no wood would be burned on site, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I second that. Discussion on that motion. Go ahead.
It feels premature, even though it's on the current proposal, if we're gonna see a new proposal. So I'm gonna not support the amendment as is, but am open to this discussion moving forward. And I hope the applicant hears the council loud and clear in terms of some preferences and what we'd like to see as a part of this proposal, so.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'm not voting in favor of the addition, to be clear, and particular people on the council have an issue. I do not have an issue.
I understand. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
I didn't hear Mr. Meadows. What was your vote?
I voted for it.
Okay. So the motion passes 3-2. Do we have any further motions on this? I move that we deny the request to extend the approval of a site plan by Timber Sauna Company, Daniel Downs, to install a seasonal sauna park in the vacant lot at 270 West Grand River Avenue for 1 year to expire May 2nd, 2026. Second by Meadows. Okay, discussion on the motion. Mr. Altman?
If the motion to deny fails, then is that a tacit approval?
Mr. City Attorney?
No, it's not. It's something we have worried about before. We've had other city attorneys advise us otherwise. I just want to point that out.
Let's solve this problem. I'll withdraw the motion. I therefore make a motion to approve the extension of the site plan by Timber Sauna Company, Daniel Downs, to install a seasonal sauna park in the vacant lot at 270 West Grand River Avenue for 1 year to expire May 2nd, 2026. Is there a motion to that, or a second to that affirmative motion?
Second.
Seconded by Meadows. Discussion on that motion.
I'll start it if I can.
Go ahead.
I'm going to vote against this motion. When I voted for this previously, it was a pilot project on a vacant piece of property that was short in term. It was going to end May 1st. It never really got off the ground. It didn't start. I don't want to see a sauna park in that location. If there are going to be redevelopment in that location, I'd like to see a different type of redevelopment. I'm looking at the DDA vote, which was 4-0, even though there was a majority there. I'm not thinking that's an overwhelming feel that we should be pursuing this at this particular time. I'm not saying that I'm against a sauna park. I'm against it in that location. I think if there's a more appropriate location within the city, I'd be happy to take a look at it again, but I'm not going to be supporting this motion.
Okay, other discussion?
I'll discuss.
Go ahead, please.
I'll be voting in favor. The applicant wrote in that there were people that were excited about the sauna. I think it's okay to talk about how the DDA voted, but that's a downtown development group. And I think we haven't seen anything where the people were saying, this isn't what we want, this is what we're concerned about. It's exciting. It was in the news. And so it's always disappointing to me where there's so much pushback on new ideas and new developments for our city.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
To Councilman Meadows' comments, does this mean, if there were an alternative proposal for that lot, would it not come before us?
Yes.
If we extend their permit for a year for planning that has not been approved? And is there additional? Are you aware of something that's gonna?
No,
that's
I am not.
interested? Oh, okay.
Okay, other discussion? I'm going to vote against this with, I understand the applicant's put in a lot of work on this, and it's kind of an interesting, unique idea. I voted against it the first time around. Everything I said then applies now. And in addition, I really just don't think this is the right location for this type of service. And it disturbs me that the council majority already voted to allow this, and the applicant was given time to make all the bells and whistles work. Apparently that was insufficient. I find the application materials to be imprecise in terms of exactly what the issues are. And Dr. Altman's concern about the fire situation is just an example of those. I suspect that there's a lot of permitting that would be required here, and I would have thought that by this time, after we passed, the majority passed a time period to put this all together, and I would have assumed that when that first went to the Planning Commission, things were already in place to do all these things. So it just seems to me that this is not in a precise enough form to really have any idea how it's going to take place and what it's going to, and who it's going to serve and what's going to happen with it. And I say again, I just think it's not a very good location for this. I think from a planning standpoint, an urban planning standpoint, it's an unfortunate location to put this kind of service. So those are the reasons I'm voting against it.
Could I make my comments?
Sure.
So I don't know if this is going to work, but it's not up to me to make that decision. And the new condition on the SUP addresses my main issue, so I'm going to be supporting it.
Okay, so let me refer to the city attorney. I did not make my motion, including Dr. Altman's first motion, thinking that that was unnecessary, that if it passed, that motion would have already been on the record and it would have been part of the requirements.
I think it'd be cleaner to include his provision as part of your motion.
Okay. Mr. Altman, would you like to make a friendly amendment to the motion then?
I will make a friendly amendment to include my condition 9, which is to prohibit, let me get the exact wording, which is that no wood shall be burned on site.
Okay, and I accept that friendly amendment. So the main motion having been modified, as we just discussed, any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Does it go forward if the wood piece is in there? And this is a question to the applicant. Is that normal?
Dan Downs with Timber Sauna Company. Can you repeat the question?
Is it normal to construct this project with a wood burning?
There's dozens of examples of these popping up around the country, both wood and electric in combination. A lot of these around the country are temporary in nature, only trailered. So people are setting up these sauna villages on trailers, which is easier for permitting. What we're proposing is somewhat of a hybrid. We have structures pre-built that are going to be moved on site that are not only trailered but also stationary. So to answer your question, we would be able to move forward without a wood-fired
You
sauna.
would or would not? I'm sorry.
We would be able to install the sauna park without wood fire. Having my comments to the council member was talking about more of the authenticity of the experience with wood and what it brings. And then the newer sauna stoves having a lot of efficiency built in.
And again,
addressing some of the
hopefully we
concerns.
can work on trickling to you this part of the conversation because you deserved to know what you were walking into.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No.
No. Okay, any further comments with regard to the motion? We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Altman,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
No.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh,
Yes.
Mayor Brookover.
No. Item 5.9, consideration of approval to establish a special city council discussion-only meeting for April 15th, 2025. Mr. City Manager.
So on your agenda is exactly that, to call for a special city council discussion-only meeting on April 15th, starting at 5 p.m. to allow you to interview one or more city attorneys who have responded to your request for proposals.
Okay, so let me just indicate, I don't have the information back from some of the council members. I think the procedure was that they were going to be submitted to me and I was going to make a list. So I would suggest that we might go ahead with this meeting, and I'd just ask the remaining council members to get me their choices by this Friday, and then I'll get you the information about my suggested list of people. Does that sound like a reasonable way to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. Do we need a motion? Yes, we do. We need a motion to establish. Could I have a motion?
I've actually got some questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So the tentative schedule wasn't updated. Is that correct? Like, it's not updated. It says interviews if necessary for today. So what's the
For today.
Yeah. It says interviews if necessary, and then it says approval of contract for April 15th.
Right, the tentative schedule called for that today, but as I mentioned in the agenda item report, I was 1 week off. Today was a official regular session where I thought it was discussion only because it was the second Tuesday of the month. So that pushed the interviews, if necessary, to April 15th. And that's why the request is before you to call that special meeting prior to the 7 o'clock time frame, because 7 o'clock on April 15th is when we're starting the budget discussions.
So are you saying, so this is the second time in April that in April, that I've been asked to alter what impacts my work schedule, my full-time job. And so it sounds like now you're saying April 15th, I have to come in agree to come in at 5, and then we're starting the budget process, which could possibly be a long process. A long day.
All right, I've got a comment too.
Sure.
We're kind of boxing ourselves in here, by starting this at 5 p.m. and then having our regular meeting scheduled. Why aren't we just having a special meeting, say, on the following night at 7 p.m.? And so we'd have 2 meetings that week, but this second meeting would be dedicated to interviews that would be scheduled with potential new city attorneys.
Or,
I don't understand
or
why
at whatever.
we're trying to shove this in on that date.
Yeah, okay, so can we just ask the city manager to ask the various council members what other dates and times they'd be available to do these interviews and circulate it as we have in the past, so that we can all arrive at a date that everybody can tolerate in terms of their work schedules and travel schedules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although it seems like we could do that tonight so that we can get this done.
I don't know. I don't have my calendar in front of me, Mark.
Okay, then
So-
that's all I needed to know.
Right, does that work? Yeah, Dr. Altman, go
I
ahead.
would prefer to go ahead with 5 p.m. on Tuesday. We had plenty of notice to raise that issue about time constraints because the agenda was published on Friday. In fact, the draft agenda went out Thursday. So there's plenty of time for people to object to that timing, and nobody objected, it sounds like, so I suggest we go ahead. And so I will go ahead and move that we establish a special city council discussion-only meeting for April 15th, 2025 at 5 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Altman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I know it's nice that some of us live and work in town and aren't currently juggling children as well, but it would be nice to be a part of a council that was considerate of how timeframes disproportionately impact certain people versus others. I won't be voting in favor.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Altman,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
No.
Councilmember Watson,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh,
No.
Mayor Brookover.
No. Motion fails. So the motion having been made and failed, can we then have the city manager inventory the council members to figure out if there's another appropriate date and time? Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's make it as soon as possible past that date as part of that.
I assume the city
instruction.
manager will do that. Okay, item 5.10 moved from the consent agenda, which is, I have to find it.
It was the easterly.
Adoption of a resolution to provide requested notice to Easterly Law, PLLC pursuant to contract for legal services. I move the adoption of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion.
What was Easterly's remarks? I know, City Manager, you said you were going to communicate with him regarding this item.
I did. He was made aware of this item, asked how long it would be. I said, according to your contract, it's 30 days. So if they adopt it tonight, it'd be 30 days from tonight. And he said, okay.
All right, and I've never historically recalled when a current city attorney didn't issue an RFP. So I was really surprised to hear that and figured I didn't want to just gloss it over on the consent agenda. Have you seen that in your history as a mayor and council person that,
Well, I'll just say that my history has been that we've got more city attorneys in the last, 7 years than we had in the previous probably 40. So I don't have a good answer for that, but I would say that I am concerned about us passing this evening without having had our interviews and being close to the time of choosing whoever is going to be the new city attorney, because that 30-day period between the time when we hire a new city attorney, since it is likely that we may choose someone at a meeting and then have to negotiate a contract, which means that they really won't be jumping into the fray, for a couple of weeks after that. And there are certain things that need to take place within the district court in transferring the cases and having appearances filed to take over those cases. So I am concerned about the fact that we're doing this tonight. I mean, if Easterly thinks it's okay, that's fine. But what about the city attorneys or a city attorney that we hire who will have to then rush to take over this, maybe with only 5 days left? Who knows? So I'm a little concerned about that, I admit.
and I just wanted to say again, it feels like in the history of East Lansing City Council, we haven't seen a situation where we've worked with a city attorney that we hired and then we resubmit requests for proposals, and that city attorney decides not to submit a request to remain in business with us.
Actually, Foster Swift decided not to submit to us the last time around.
Yeah, and I think that was after negotiations because they were negotiating at a different price.
And for the historical record, we had the same city attorney for 59 years, I think. So there were no RFPs that I was aware of. Maybe
Dang.
Mr. Meadows was aware of some RFPs, but I don't think there were. So that
That's
is a
long.
recent history that's only occurred
Yeah.
in the last 7 or 8 years. So.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a long time to be able to keep a business, but we've also seen the way that people move these days, employment-wise, is different. And while we're taking very seriously the consideration of our city attorneys, they also are interviewing us. Like, we also need to be a pleasant place to work at, and it's concerning, again, when someone was hired with us, served with us, but then didn't issue an RFP, and I think we should be careful of the image that we might have or project and how we take care of the people that we hire.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Altman?
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows?
And what is the motion that's on the table?
Well, it's the motion I
To have
made.
the city manager circulate and...
Or it's on Easterly's contract.
It's the adoption of the resolution.
The resolution of
provide required
termination of the
notice.
contract, which is in your record.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. I thought we took a vote, and we turned down the resolution, and now we were asking the city manager to circulate, find out a new date.
You're on
for
to a different item.
Oh,
What was
okay.
consent agenda item 3.7 became business agenda 5.10, which is the adoption of resolution to provide required notice to Easterly Law PLLC pursuant to contract for legal services.
It's in your packet under City of East Lansing, resolution to provide notice termination, City Council regular session of April 8th, 2025.
Okay.
Okay?
Then my answer is no.
Okay, go ahead.
Councilmember Watson?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh?
Yes.
Mayor Brookover?
Yes. Okay, motion passes by a vote of 3-2. I think, unless I've become again confused, we are at the end of the regular agenda. Could we have a motion with regard to closed session, please?
I move that we enter closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 sub 1 sub C to discuss strategy connected with the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Altman?
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh?
Yes.
Mayor Brookover?
Yes. Okay, we're going to adjourn to closed session, and then we'll be back. we're ready. We're coming back into open session, hopefully with a motion.
In session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we have roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Altman?
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh?
Yes.
Mayor Brookover?
Yes. Okay, do we have any further motions?
I move to approve the tentative agreement between the City of East Lansing and the Capital City Labor Program dated March 20th, 2025, and authorize the city manager to sign the collective bargaining agreement effective July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026.
I second the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Altman, seconded by Watson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thanks, people, for your time and effort tonight.